Clog TV.
Beyond the policy.
Yeah, welcome back to the KOKO Digest Morning Show. If you're just tuning in, this is the KOKO Digest Morning Show, and we're about to have our main discussion. And today's topic is about the legal capacity to marry, part 2. So we have our guest, and he is in the person of lawyer Ernest Hardy Natoma Silas, and he's an associate lawyer at Gomda and Associates. He was here with us a few weeks ago to discuss the legal aspects of marriage, who can marry, all of that. We will give you a brief, what's the word? Summary, recap. Yes, recap. We'll give you a brief recap about everything we talked about. You can visit our Facebook and YouTube page to find that conversation and learn something. Don't forget to send in your comments and your questions, your messages, call in as well when the phone lines are open to our WhatsApp number, of course, which will be displayed on your screen, and of course on our live stream on Facebook and YouTube, so that I can read them aloud and then we can get interactive here with our guests. So, Lawyer Hardy.
Hello, Yaya.
Thank you so much for joining us again.
Glad to be back on again. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. So the last time we spoke about the legal capacity to marry, I remember we talked about who can marry,
Yes.
which was the basic requirements for marriage.
Yes.
Then what are some of the restrictions, even the types of marriage and the legal requirements. So if you can give our guests just a brief summary of that so that they can go and look for the rest.
Okay, that's fine. So when we speak about marriage, we spoke about the fact that we have 3 main types of marriages in Ghana. We have the marriage under ordinance, we have the customary law marriage, and we have the Mohammedan marriage. We spoke about the fact that in Ghana, the minimum requirement of age to get married is 18 years old. However, between the ages of 18 and 21, you will still need the consent
yes.
of your marriage, of your parents, sorry. And we also spoke about the fact that when it comes to customary law marriage, it is polygamous in nature, meaning you can have more than one wife, and that applies to the Mohammedan marriages as well. It means you can have more than one wife. However, when we speak about the marriage under ordinance, one man is limited to one woman.
Yeah.
So I think these were the key areas we spoke about with regards to capacity to get married.
Yes. Okay. So I remember we did not finish the conversation. We were going to talk about some of the special circumstances regarding marriage. So some of the exceptions and special cases, such as underage marriages, proxy marriages, even cultural or even religious variations. So can you touch a little bit on that for us?
Okay, so let's deal with the proxy marriages, which is basically a couple getting married with the absence of maybe one or both of the parties. So in this case, you want to get married in Ghana, but the spouse is not within the jurisdiction. Can the marriage still go ahead? Can the marriage still hold? And under our customary law, that is permissible. It happens, we've seen it several times where one party is unavailable for certain reasons. Maybe he's working or he's just living very far away, but the marriage needs to come on.
Yeah.
In that case, his family would have somebody representing him. We spoke about the fact that customary law marriage entails the union between 2 families. So even if the spouse is not available, even if the spouse is not present, a family member or a relation of that spouse can stand in for him or her, and the marriage will still be conducted. So on that basis, we have proxy marriages being permissible under our laws.
So what about the child marriage as well?
Okay, so when we speak about child marriage, we are speaking about marriage of a person below the age of 18. Our laws frown upon
Okay.
it. And it's rather unfortunate. It's still within certain facets or certain cultures. We still see child marriages happening, but it's not permissible by law. You can be imprisoned for engaging in child marriage or even giving up a child in marriage.
Okay. But I think I was going to ask, if I remember correctly, that there are some cultures, I remember from learning Akan, I think even in the Akan tradition, where you can give your daughter to somebody you owe as a
Yes.
wife to pay
Yes.
off that debt.
Yes.
Some people may argue that this is our culture. This was there before, Western laws and things came to be taken up. So something like that, how does the law navigate that?
Well, so the law takes into consideration custom. When even legislation is passed, it takes into consideration custom. However, you will learn that legislative acts or acts of parliament are, in terms of hierarchy, they are of a higher standing.
Okay.
So let's say you have a customary law prescribing a method of doing something or a way of doing something, and you have an act of parliament prescribing a different way. In law, we are going to abide by what the act of parliament says.
Okay, so the parliament one overrides.
It overrides
Okay.
the customs. So yes, in this case, all those customs that permit child marriage or giving up a child in marriage to pay a debt owed, it becomes illegal or it
Okay.
becomes against the laws of the state.
So in a situation like that where you see the child needs the consent of the parents.
Yes.
And let's say this child is stubborn. So this child goes to seek some sort of refuge from social services or something. Or basically the law has been involved in this issue. It's probably started out as a family issue.
Yes.
And then the law comes in and then the parents are like, yeah. How then does the law seek to, create some justice or to free that child from a situation like that? Because you are basically your parents' property at this point.
Yes.
How does the law do that?
Okay, so if I get your question correctly, you are saying in the situation where the parents still insist on giving up the child in marriage. Okay, so the law prescribes penalties for such instances or such situations. When you look at Section 14 and 15 of the Children's Act, you see that a child should not be given up in marriage in any or betrothed in any way. So in that situation, there's a penalty for the parents. And also the law is also going to put in place measures to safeguard the interest of the child. Because like you said, it's the parents that take care of the child. The parents pay his school fees or her school fees, and the well-being and upbringing of the child is entirely in the hands of the parents.
Yeah.
So social welfare is going to put in place certain measures to take care of the child, even if that will mean removing the child from the custody of the parents.
Okay. But in Ghana here, do we have that capacity?
We actually do.
So
and I've seen certain
that. So
instances.
maybe a 12-year-old
Yes.
will be taken out of their home, and the government or our agencies here in the country can take care of that child till he or she's about 18, legally an adult, to be able to stay on his or her own.
Yes. So it's rare, but it does exist.
Okay.
So they have various private institutions that are just, or NGOs that are just set up for instances like this.
Okay.
So in a situation like this, the social welfare department is just going to be sort of like a medium between the child and these institutions. And they are going to place these institutions, these children in these homes to take care of the child up until the child attains the age of majority.
Okay, so I think based on Britney Spears, I heard of a conservatorship. What is a conservatorship?
Okay, so this is a system that is put in place for somebody who is not or does not possess much mental capacity or the requisite mental capacity to handle his or her affairs. And it goes beyond age. Like you said, Britney Spears, who is way past the age of majority, but she's still put under this system just to safeguard her interests, because as it stands, she on her own might not be able to make the decisions that would be necessary for her well-being.
Okay. So someone like that, can they also marry?
Yes.
Okay. So how does that work?
So let's, if we find ourselves in the Ghanaian setting, so we are going into the issue of, let's say, maybe insanity of a sort, unsound mind, maybe the unsoundness of the mind and all of that. We'll see that under Section 13(2)(b) of the Matrimonial Causes Act, it states that anyone who is of unsound mind who gets married, it makes the marriage what? Voidable.
Okay.
So when they say voidable, what they are saying is that the marriage is valid until steps are taken to set it aside. And for me personally, I find it a bit problematic.
Okay.
Because I would have expected that getting married to somebody who is of an unsound mind should make the marriage void. Void meaning it's non-existent. It shouldn't hold at all. But the law says that it holds unless one of the parties to the marriage takes steps to set it aside.
Okay.
So, as far as I'm concerned, such a marriage will hold.
So, somebody who's not of sound mind, do they even have the capacity to take steps to try to nullify the marriage?
That's also a very good question. It depends on, when we talk about
the issue,
unsoundness of the mind, it's very broad. Some are occasional. Some are more permanent than others.
Yeah.
So let's say you are suffering from maybe what we call insane delusions. Then maybe when you have your episodes, you get married. But when you're out of those episodes, you realize that this is not the person I want to marry. You can take steps to nullify that marriage. Okay. So in such a situation, it makes more sense. The person will be able to take those steps to nullify the marriage. However, if you find yourself, or if in a different situation where that marriage or that mental condition is of a more permanent nature, at what point is the person going to come out of it and take steps to nullify the marriage? So yeah, that's also a bit problematic.
Yeah. Okay. So I have, I think, two more. Then we get into today's part. Are there any specific requirements for same-sex marriages, considering the trends these days?
In Ghana,
it's still illegal.
Yes, it is.
So I mean, there have been a few conversations here and there. Do you think we are towing that line of possibly accepting it or legalizing it in any way?
As it stands right now, I do not see the possibility of it happening, not anytime soon. Not anytime soon. As it stands now, it's pretty clear that the state is of the opinion that this is not what we would like to encourage in the society. Yes.
Yeah. Still on the topic of the same-sex, let me just make it relationships even. Relationships in general are beyond sexual activity, right? So the privacy of such, if someone is in a same-sex relationship and they are not brandishing, for lack of a better word, there are sexual activities all over, and they do that. Just like with the heterosexual relationships, the privacy of your room, whether you are engaging in unnatural carnal knowledge or even the approved activities in the bedroom. For the same-sex people, if they are not explicitly out there showing that they are in a same-sex relationship, does the law have any holding on them? Okay,
so when you say same-sex relationship, I do not think there's necessarily any issue with that as far as the law is concerned.
Okay.
So it's more to do with maybe the activities, the actions that follow this same-sex relationship. Okay. So if maybe two boys are always working together or two girls are always working together, it's just going to be left with maybe the opinions of people and suspicion. But there isn't much that the law is going to do at that stage, up until maybe certain actions are involved and certain, at that point then it goes against the laws.
Okay. So basically until they decide to marry, they are free in a way.
Well, I wouldn't say they are free. What I would say is that until they decide to, I don't even think they can decide to get married as it stands. They cannot. But up and during that phase of just having a relationship with somebody, that alone is not an offense. It's not illegal.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So now they said some of the legal consequences with bigamous marriage. But before I even ask that one, what is bigamy?
Okay. So we are talking about a man getting married to more than one woman.
Okay.
Yes. A man getting married to more than one woman. And it's part of our customs.
Okay. So there's polygamy and then there's bigamy.
Yes.
Can you differentiate for us?
Okay, so bigamy is more, so polygamy is a man. Okay, so polygamy is more sex specific.
Okay.
Bigamy isn't really sex specific.
Okay.
It's just, so a person having multiple partners. In Ghana, we do not see a woman marrying multiple men.
Okay.
Yes, but in certain places, I believe it is possible for one woman to have multiple husbands.
Okay.
But as far as Ghana is concerned, it's just a man having multiple wives.
Okay. So what are some of the legal implications for that?
Like I said, it's accepted under customary law.
Okay.
And under Mohammedan law, we see it also. So a man can have multiple wives, treat all of them as his wives. All the children of these wives are valid children, and they enjoy the same rights and benefits, privileges as any monogamous wife would.
Yeah.
As any monogamous wife would. Okay. So yes, it's their wives properly so called.
Okay. So I remember you also said you gave us some distinction between the customary marriage and the ordinance, that if you do one, you cannot do the other to another woman. True. So in the bigamy line, if the man's first wife is customary, he must continue like that.
Okay, so if the man's first wife is customary, the subsequent wives, if that marriage is going to be valid, is going to be either customary or Mohammedan.
Okay.
Yes, because both of them support polygamy. They are polygamous in nature.
Okay. All right. So let's get quickly into the topic for today. That's the part 2. We had to finish up the last time's topic.
That was a long recap.
Yeah. We had to finish it, so we continued it. So yes, please don't forget to send in your comments and your suggestions, your questions to our live stream on Facebook and YouTube, and also to our WhatsApp contact displayed on your screen. Join in the conversation. Ask our lawyer here all the questions on your heart. And when the phone lines are open, you can also call in and ask your questions to be answered. So, yes, today's part 2 is talking about the mental capacity, and its implications for marriage. So, let's get quickly into it. What are mental requirements for marriage?
Okay, so let's get into when we talk about mental capacity, what we are talking about. So basically, we are talking about the ability of a person to make an informed decision. Okay. So the ability of a person to make an informed decision based on understanding, taking into consideration the possible options, and also the consequences of that decision. Okay. So up until these are met or are seen in a person, the person does not have mental capacity. So that's why a child, we do not see a child as somebody who can have mental capacity, because we are saying that a child does not have that understanding
Yeah.
to be able to know the outcome of his or her decisions.
Okay.
And that's the same thing that also applies to maybe people who are suffering from one mental illness or the other. They cannot really appreciate the outcomes of or the consequences of their decision.
Okay. So, are there mental illnesses or mental health issues where, let's say, the line is drawn here that if you have this disorder, from this disorder to this disorder, you are not viable, and then maybe this disorder to this, you are, it's permissible for you?
Our laws have not been developed to that extent.
Okay.
Yes. So we are still taking the issue of unsoundness of a mind holistically.
Okay.
We haven't really delved into what exactly the unsoundness of the mind will entail. So yes, so we haven't.
Okay, so let's say I'm a young girl,
Okay.
unemployed, you know the economy issue, so I'm really depressed. I'm a beautiful girl, but some boy is trying to marry me, but the depression, like lifestyle spoke about, economic issues have made me depressed.
Okay.
Will I be deemed as someone of unsound mind to get into a marriage?
Well, depression is a very serious issue. We tend to trivialize it a lot, but it's quite serious. The issue is, will you be able to establish in court that the depression, based on your depression, you are not able to adequately ascertain the outcome or the consequences of your decision? Because that's what mental capacity will boil down to. Are you able to adequately determine that A and B will lead to C?
Okay.
Yes, it's going to, I would think it's going to be a bit difficult, but once you're able to be diagnosed medically, you've been diagnosed of going through maybe battling depression and some mental ailment, then you'll be able to, you can stand a chance of...
Okay. So, based on this scenario, this premise, I'm saying I'm depressed, I can't marry. Does the man have the right to take me to court to sort of, for me to justify my depression that I can't marry him?
So when you say you are depressed, you can't marry, you mean you can't continue in the marriage, or?
No, so I'm saying that the premise was that I'm a young girl, unemployed, depressed about it because, financial issues. And then a boy or a guy around me is trying to seek my hand in marriage. Yes. And I'm saying that I don't have the capacity to marry because I am heavily depressed. Something like that.
Okay.
Is there a need for me to go and justify that?
I don't think there's, when we talk of marriage, we are talking about consent to even begin with. So it's entirely up to you to say, I do not want to get married. Okay. So you don't have to justify it.
Okay. So in that case then, how does proving to court that you are truly depressed and you cannot, meet the requirements of the marriage come in then?
That comes in after.
Okay.
So in a situation where the parties are already married, we spoke about the fact that getting married to somebody who is suffering from a mental ailment makes the marriage voidable. Meaning steps can be taken to set the marriage aside. So in such a situation, you are already married, and you realize that maybe I got married within a time frame that I was suffering from a mental ailment. You can take steps to set the marriage aside. In that situation, it wouldn't be a divorce. It wouldn't be a divorce. It will be what we term nullity. And that would just set the entire marriage aside as though it never happened.
Okay. So what then is the difference between the nullity and what's the distinction?
Okay. So when you divorce somebody, the person was your husband or was your wife, and it's still going to be regarded as your ex-husband or ex-wife, legally speaking. Okay. But when you go through the process of nullity, you are setting every...
So, they're wiping the slate clean.
Wiping the entire slate clean as though
you
were never married.
I mean, pictures and things were on social media.
it goes a long way for some people, you
Yeah.
know, especially if the person was either forced or didn't do it out of the person's will. The person wouldn't want to maybe walk around as maybe a divorcee.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even intend to do this.
Okay.
So a nullity proceeding would be the best for the
For them.
person.
Okay. So with the nullity proceedings, can a couple who want to, like, I don't know, maybe some issue has happened that they want to go their separate ways and they don't want to be regarded as ex whatevers. So they opt. Are people allowed to opt for the nullity?
No, you're not. You don't opt for a nullity. It's
Okay.
not a pick and choose. It depends on the peculiar circumstances.
Okay.
Okay. So nullity is mostly. So we have certain instances that the law would see a marriage as being null and void.
Okay.
We spoke about it the last time, but I'll just do a recap. For instance, if one person, a man, has already been married under the ordinance, he goes
To marry
to a
again.
different community, goes and marries the second wife, whether under ordinance or not,
customary.
notwithstanding, that marriage is a nullity. It
Okay.
never existed in the eyes of the law.
Okay.
So that will make that marriage a nullity. However, if he marries a second wife under the first wife under customary law, marries the second wife under customary law, marries the third wife under customary law, and wants to leave one of them, or one of them wants out, they cannot come under nullity.
Okay.
Those marriages were validly entered into.
Okay.
So as much as possible, their remedy or their way out is going to be by the dissolution of the marriage through divorce.
Okay. So the nullity comes maybe when it's because of a mental health issue.
Okay.
Or force, something the person didn't intend.
Yes, so
to.
the
lack of
nullity
consent.
mostly comes in, or it comes in when a formal requirement or an essential requirement for marriage was
not met.
met.
Okay. Okay.
So yes, then we now have to look at the formal requirements when it comes to the marriage under ordinance. We are going to look at the publication of bans,
yes.
even the venue
Yeah.
where you conduct that marriage. If it's not a licensed venue, it's going to be problematic. That has the
okay.
tendency of making a marriage void.
Okay.
If the priest that officiates the marriage is not a licensed priest for that purpose, that has the tendency of making that marriage a nullity.
Okay. But in the movies, some of these romantic comedies, you see that they just go online, you know, sort of apply to something in India, given that mandate to be able to officiate. So you see that a couple is getting married and maybe it's their best friend that is officiating. How does that also work? Or it's not something that works in Ghana?
It can.
Okay.
It depends on what's... So even under the marriage under ordinance, you know we can do it through the special license. And in such a case, it's mostly going to be the special license
Okay.
certificate that is going to be issued to the marriage couple.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the special license, most of these requirements will not be essential. The venue and who is officiating it is a bit relaxed there. Yes.
Okay. So, yes, let's come back to the mental health issue.
Okay.
I just got a question in my mind. So, in a situation where the couple is freshly married, you know, they have a child, then there's postpartum depression that seemingly affects the mothers.
Okay.
In a situation like that, where it is a very severe form of postpartum depression, what happens? What are the possible steps that can be taken?
Kindly come again.
So, in a situation where the wife has just had a child and she's going through severe postpartum depression and probably even wants out of the marriage, would the nullity come in, or it still has to be a divorce?
No, so in that situation, it's still going to have to be a divorce.
Okay.
As long as the marriage met the requirements at the point of them getting married, that is going to necessitate them to dissolve it through a divorce.
Okay. All right. So, yes, please send in your questions and comments so that we read to our lawyer here. And don't forget to also join in our conversation. Call in. The phone lines will be opened very soon so that you can ask any questions that you have. Call a friend, text a friend to join in the conversation here on KOKO Digest. We are discussing the legal capacity to marry. So, Are there, I think we need to try and mention some of the mental health conditions or disabilities that impact legal capacity so that we can get a more substantial understanding to it. Because, I mean, we are trying to talk about depression, and even that seems to be dicey. So what are some that are concrete?
Okay. Insanity. When we talk of insanity, simplicity, maybe madness.
Okay.
What we call madness, or what we term as madness. In such a situation, it falls under the mental capacity or lack of mental capacity. We also have insane delusions, which are more temporal. At certain times, the person might be sane. At other times, the person might be insane.
Okay. So the insane delusions, is that something similar to the bipolar, disorder or schizophrenia or something?
Not necessarily. They are different conditions. However, they have the tendency to operate alike. Like when you talk of bipolar, it's also it also has that temporal nature or a nature of coming occasionally. Yes, like you said, two extremes. So they all operate in similar ways, but the health experts will tell you that there are different conditions based on certain maybe attributes that it comes with. They are entirely different conditions.
So which other ones are also concrete, maybe even prescribed, that if you fall in this category, then
like you said, bipolar is also if you are bipolar, it's one of the conditions that, as much as possible, or for somebody who is bipolar, the person might not be able to take decisions, lasting decisions, taking into consideration the outcomes of those decisions. So if you find yourself within these categories of mental illness, then you would be considered as, that marriage would be considered as voidable.
Okay. So does the law, require the couple to go through some sort of psych evaluation? I mean, in the church, you do the whole counseling and everything, but does the law require some sort of psychological or psychiatric evaluation before you proceed?
No, the law does not mandate any of that. So if in a situation where a party wants to annul a marriage or nullify a marriage based on mental, maybe any of the mental issues, then the person, that party might have to, or that fact must have to be established in court. That indeed I got married at a time that I was not mentally stable. And I did not have the capacity to enter sin.
Okay, so with that, how would one even prove something like that?
Well, so there's we have medical experts. Okay, that would do their test and come and give expert evidence in court. So in such a situation, the person will probably have to go for a psych evaluation, and whatever the medical expert comes up with will be tendered in as evidence in court.
Okay, so wouldn't it rather be prudent for the law to require or mandate any couple that maybe one or both parties may have, mental health? I mean, considering the state of the nation we are in, a lot of us might have mental health issues.
Without knowing,
Yeah, so why don't we rather mandate the couples to go through something like that so that they can check such
I think
issues?
that's one way to look at it. Probably it's going to be the strain that comes with the marriage process. Probably the law is not trying to make it more difficult for people to get married than it already is. When you tell two people they have to go for a psych evaluation before they can get married, it might deter them in a way.
No, in the sense of, I am bipolar, right? And then I have a partner, we are ready to, there should be some sort of requirement that, okay, you knowing that you are bipolar or knowing that you have this disorder, get yourself evaluated to check if you are in that space.
Well, yeah, that will help. Maybe, so you're referring to people with the conditions.
Yeah, people with the condition. I mean, a lot of a lot of the youth now, they will be shouting depression, yes. But even with the depression, there are types and,
Okay.
magnitudes to it. So with that too, some small evaluation wouldn't be bad.
It wouldn't. It will help. It will help actually. The issue with that is we have this, or there's this presumption when two people come up and say they want to get married. At that point, you wouldn't be looking at them as insane people.
Yeah.
As much as possible, for anybody to want to take up such a responsibility is somebody that the law will consider as sane. So that's the presumption of sanity.
Okay.
Yes. So in place of the presumption of sanity, or in sight of the presumption of sanity, that's why maybe there isn't any other, maybe further checks or requirements by the law for them to go through any psych evaluation.
Okay. But it can be added to the medical ones, check your sickle cell rhesus factor, all these things. The medical professionals would be able to tell whether there's something
Evaluate them.
wrong. Yes.
And
so with that, they can add it.
okay, so in a situation where the medical expert evaluates and says this very beautiful girl or this very beautiful boy is unfit for marriage, what you're saying is that the marriage will not be able to come on.
Yeah.
Okay. That might be good. It also stands to pose a lot of challenges.
Yes.
Especially if the medical expert is crashing on you.
Yeah. Hey. Well, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
When we come back, we will go into more aspects of the legal capacity to marry, especially for the mental side. We'll talk about age and things like that. So, yes, call your friend, text your friend to join in the conversation here on the KOKO Digest Morning Show on Clock TV, on YouTube and Facebook. Look for Clock TV and then send in your comments, your questions. Call in when the phone lines are open. Of course, our WhatsApp number will be displayed on your screen every now and then for you to send in a message. We will be right back. Welcome back to the KOKO Digest Morning Show. If you're just tuning in, this is the KOKO Digest Morning Show, and we are having our main discussion with a lawyer. He is lawyer Hadi Natoma Silas, and he's talking about, or he's teaching us about the legal capacity to marry in terms of the mental capacity. We had this conversation some weeks ago, so just look for Clock TV on your Facebook or YouTube. Just search for the legal capacity to marry, understanding marriage, and then get the part 1 of this discussion. Don't forget to send in your comments to our WhatsApp number displayed on your screens. Join our live stream on Facebook and YouTube to ask your questions. And then also the phone lines will be open for you to call in and ask your questions. So yes, my lawyer. About mental capacity, people tend to factor age into that.
Yes.
So how does age affect someone's mental capacity?
Okay, so age, we'll start by understanding that marriage is a contract. And for every valid contract, the person entering it should be of age or should have the capacity to attain the age of majority to be able to enter into such a contract. And in Ghana, our laws will tell us that the age of consent is 18. To get married is 18. So that's the age that regulates marriages in Ghana. However, between the ages of 18 to 21, you will need parental consent in addition to the consent of the child or the person getting married to enter into a valid marriage.
Okay, so I think I have 2 questions here. If between ages 18 and 21, you need your parents' consent, is that not an indicator that you shouldn't even be going into that? Then secondly, the older people who do get into marriage of their own volition, still tend to need their parents, we call it blessing, or even in our African setting here, the two families need to agree. That is a form of consent. So how does the consent work in both sides?
Okay, so the first question, I think that's an interesting perspective for, let's say, an 18-year-old going into marriage, and the law is saying that that person will need the formal consent of the parent. That would also, from what you are saying, the person shouldn't even be getting married if you are going to be needing the formal consent of your parents. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. However, it's what the law says.
Okay.
Consent is still needed for those people. Just it's not necessarily an indication that the person is not fit for marriage, but just to, because during that age, the person is still under some sort of guardianship. So just to legitimize that handing over of somebody under your custody to another person.
Okay.
That's why the requirement is there that the parent will give a consent.
Okay.
Yes. And your second question regarding the families.
If the much older...
For the much older people, that's under customary law. We will still need the families to play a role. Yes, that's very accurate. It's a bit different when it comes to marriage under ordinance.
Okay.
Marriage under ordinance will not necessitate that your family is present.
Okay.
So in such a case, you can get married under ordinance without the presence of any of your family members.
Okay, so let's break the ordinance into two, because here we have the religious ordinance, which is the church, and then the court one. In this our religious setting here, I carry you that pastor, please bless us. The pastor would probably say no or object to it because our families are not a part of that. So as much as, yes, the ordinance allows for us to do that, how do we then navigate the pastor or the priest officiating that ceremonies
without the parents? So in such a case, it is not a requirement. It's not a legal requirement for the parents to be there. However, the pastor or the priest might prefer that the parents are there, maybe giving their blessing in one way or the other. So it's a challenge. It's in such a situation, it's a challenge in that you will still need your parents to give you out for most priests. But it's not, the marriage under ordinance is not entirely religious, like I said. So some may not necessitate the presence of a priest even in the first place. You can go to the court or the district assemblies and get it done. Okay.
I was asking because in our Ghanaian society here, we've sort of separated it, that there's court wedding, then there's church wedding. Even though, according to you, it's basically the same thing. It's an ordinance marriage.
They all fall under marriage and ordinance.
So that's why I'm asking, because when if I decide to go to the court with you, we will get the nuptials done quickly. But with a religious body involved, then comes the challenge, and then the parents' consent and all of that. So with age, again, how does age impact, the mental capacity? Because our parents and things like that, they tend to start pressuring us from 23, 24. When you are younger than that,
you started early.
They say things like, oh, what does she know? So what makes age 23, 24 different from maybe 35? Because some people would say maybe at 35 or so, you are more seasoned, you've experienced life. So can you give us how age does impact the mental capacity?
So primarily it's culture. Culture plays a huge role. So in certain places, they will start at 12. They will probably pressure you to get married at 12. In other places, maybe 18. Other places, 23. But our dispensation, the society we also find ourselves, also plays a key role. In that, around that time, you would have probably finished schooling, finished your university, you have your degree, probably done with national service, and ready to start life proper. So at that stage, they might begin to pressure you into getting married. Not necessarily because there's anything that comes to the age 22 or 24 or 26, but around that time is you've left a phase of your life and you are embracing a different phase. So though rather that you embrace that phase with marriage in mind.
Okay. So how also does that impact decision making? Because I think even on social media, you see posts like maybe a 30-year-old saying things I wish I knew in my 20s. Does age really play a role in the decision making? Because it seems as though the 20s are more reckless, and then the 30s tend to be more grounded in life, level-headed and things. How does that affect marriage?
No matter how we look at it, age plays a role. How we thought or how we assess things in our teenage years is very different from how we assess things now.
Yeah.
So age does play a role. However, there isn't any magic age that one should get married.
Okay.
There are a lot of other important things that need to be taken into consideration.
Okay.
So with regards to marriage, I do not believe that there's any specific age where one should be getting married.
Okay. So age and maturity, what is the correlation there?
Well, in a society such as ours, we would automatically assume the older is the more mature, which is true to some extent, but not entirely true. Because as you grow, you realize that some may be older, but not as matured as you expect. So it's not, they are not, it's not a direct correlation. It's not. It doesn't necessarily mean that the older person is a more mature one.
Okay.
Or even the older you are necessarily will make you more mature. That doesn't also mean. The benefit that comes to age is, one of the benefits is experience.
Yes.
The older one probably has experienced more things. So the person's outlook on life will be richer.
Okay.
The person has seen the good, the bad.
Okay. So what is uninformed consent and what role does it play? What are the implications on marriage?
Okay, so what we are saying is, so the person might have given consent without necessarily knowing the extent of the consent, taking into consideration maybe factors such as who the person is or what the person does, or maybe anything that would mean or that would matter to you. Okay. So you're giving your consent to somebody only to realize maybe the person isn't necessarily who you think it is. So that's when it comes to marriage, that can also be problematic. Okay. Because we would find out that the most essential element in marriage is consent, mutual consent by both parties. Yeah. Mutual consent by both parties. Where there's no consent, there can be no marriage. Where there's consent, there is marriage. So when there's uninformed, when the consent is uninformed, or the person doesn't necessarily understand the extent of the marriage or the consent, it has the tendency to make it voidable, because you realize that, or you find out that fraud, especially if it is tainted by fraud, maybe somebody was able to maybe in a way, let's say somebody was married elsewhere, and then comes to and you didn't know about it, or the person has changed his whole identity. He told you he's Jacob, meanwhile his name is Peter. Okay. He's giving you a whole different identity. You thought you were getting married to Jacob, only to find out that he's Peter. It's Peter you're getting married to. Okay. That consent is tainted by fraud, and it puts the marriage in. It makes the marriage voidable in nature. Okay. Steps can be taken to set that marriage aside.
Okay. So let's quickly, if you can explain to us the difference, the definitions and then the differences between consent, coercion, and duress.
Okay, so when we talk of consent, we are looking at mutual agreement. You and I agreeing to do something together, free and void of external forces. So that is consent, and that is what is required for a marriage to be valid. Then when we look at coercion, we are looking at a form of force, external force, coming into play, sometimes with threats, threatening the person. If you don't do it, I'll do this, or just trying to bully the person in a way. And when we look at, the last one is duress. When we look at duress, we are looking at maybe a form of persuasion. You have a way of maybe persuading the person You might not necessarily threaten the person, but you have a way of persuading the person to taint the consent of the person. So
Okay.
ideally, the person will not necessarily have given the consent.
yeah.
However, with duress, the person will still go ahead and give consent, even
Okay.
though the person is not interested in engaging.
So where does emotional blackmail fall in such a situation, or even flashes of money? You know, like you said, as you use fraud, my mind just went to a fraud boy. He has come with his Lamborghini and things, and then, you know, he's flashing all this money. You genuinely don't want to, but you to where you are in life, you could use some elevation. So
That will be a very difficult situation to prove that you entered into it by duress.
okay.
If somebody comes and he's flashing money,
Couldn't it be coercion either? Because the person saw your situation in life.
no,
And,
no. Okay, it depends. It depends on the relationship.
Okay.
So if, let's say, a person is driving on the street and he decides to live a flashy life and you see it and you're attracted, it's very different from if somebody is, let's say, an employer and an employee relationship, and the employer is using his status as an employer to take advantage of the employee flash. Maybe in that stage, then we can talk of duress.
okay.
Yes, we can talk of duress. We can talk of coercion.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's much different from somebody just living his life and you falling in love with the flash and
Yeah.
getting married to him.
Okay. Okay. So to wrap up, what will be your closing remarks to our audience or our viewers watching about, you know, the legal capacity to marry? Because we tend to have so many things mixed up. So what are your final remarks about marriage?
Well, when it comes to legal capacity to get married, the first thing we have to look at is age. We are going to have to make sure the person or the people involved are above the age of 18.
Okay.
If possible, above the age of 21. But if below the age of 21, they must have the consent of their parents. Another thing we are going to look at is, depending on what marriage you are engaging in. If you are engaging in marriage under ordinance, then you are engaging in a marriage that is monogamous in nature.
Okay.
One man, one wife, to the exclusion of all others. Nobody else.
Okay.
If you are entering into a customary law marriage, you are looking at, or a Mohammedan marriage, you are looking at a marriage that is polygamous in nature, which means there's the tendency for the man to marry 2, 3, or even 4 wives.
Okay.
So somebody who is married under ordinance cannot get married again, either under customary law or under the Mohammedan law marriage. So these are the key areas we look at when we are talking about consent. Mental capacity comes in. Like you said, are you bipolar? Are you going through any, serious mental ailment? You probably wouldn't want to engage in marriage at that point. But if you are already married, and you strongly believe, or you find out that at the point you're getting married, you are undergoing severe underlying mental conditions, and you want to take steps, you want to take certain steps to, you want to leave the marriage is voidable in nature. You can take certain steps to nullify the marriage, and it will be as though it never existed.
Okay.
So that's with it when it comes to mental capacity as well.
Okay. Thank you so much for granting us this interview.
Thank
we
you
will
too.
have you back. We are done with these marriage issues. We will have you back for family law, property and inheritance and things like that, because I saw it on your profile. So we will contact you again so that we can discuss that. And this brings us to the end of the KOKO Digest Morning Show. A big thank you to you, my cherished viewers, for staying with us throughout from 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. A big thank you to our sponsors. A big thank you to our production team, everybody that's contributed to making this program a success. A big thank you to our management, all of you watching over us, giving us your guidance. Thank you so much. A big thank you as well to every single one of you that shared, posted, sent in your comments, sent in your questions and everything. Big thank you to you. We will see you once again on Thursday morning, bright and early. And that is all for today. Have a blessed week ahead.
Clog TV. Beyond the policy.